All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to our webinar today. Appreciate everybody showing up. Hope you all are enjoying your summer so far, or if you haven't officially started, you're about to start. Hope you've got some great plans. My name is Jason Johnson. I represent the WhyTry organization. Thrilled to have Christian Moore with us, and he's who we're going to be hearing the most from. I'll turn it over to him in just a minute. But Christian is hey, Tim Nolan, got to shout out Tim when he hops on,
Hey,
one of the
Tim.
best humans on the planet in Cincinnati.
I'm a big
Um,
fan.
Hey, Christian is a public speaker, social worker, founder of the WhyTry Program, author, and we're going to hear from him specifically on resilience and kind of our approach to resilience, skills of resilience, etc. Before we do that, just want to welcome everybody that has hopped on with us today. Just to set expectations, we're going to target going for about an hour. Really appreciate you. We know those hours in June are really precious. That's when a lot of you are recharging batteries and kind of trying to recover from what the last academic year has been, and really appreciate you showing up on a summer day like today. We will, one note, so we are on a webinar link, which means Christian and I are the only ones with live cameras and live microphones. We can't see and hear the rest of you. So we will lean on the chat. We'll reach out to you for response from time to time on a few things. But one note on the chat, it is helpful if people can see your comments. So there's one setting that we want to make sure you have adjusted. If you open up the chat box that you have available there, and right above where you type a message into the chat, it says to, and then there's a little drop down menu there where you can select who you're sharing your comments with. That should say to everyone. If that doesn't say everyone, if it says hosts and panelists, Christian and I are the only ones that can see your comments. So make that adjustment. Go ahead and adjust that so that you're sharing comments with everyone. And then after you have after you've done that, let's just go with the same my go-to. Type into the chat, and it'll allow me to do a quick check of your settings. Type into the chat an emoji that expresses how your summer is going so far, how you're feeling about your summer so far. Give us an emoji react to in the chat. Let us know how you Oh, my friend in Chinley, love it. Okay, we've got the oh, you never disappoint. The emoji react always gets me. Never disappoint. That's a melting. Oh, it's funny. Great job. And thank you. It looks like everybody got their chat settings adjusted over. Oh, they keep coming. So good. Well, with that as an introduction, and thank you for making the setting adjustment in your chat. Today we're going to be focusing. You get to hear from one of the best, one of the founders of the WhyTry organization, and I'll share a little bit throughout as well. My name's Jason Johnson. I'm the uh, director of training for the WhyTry organization. Been with WhyTry for about 10 years now. Prior to that, I worked as a school psychologist in the largest school district in my home state of Utah. Absolutely loved what I did. I was able to use WhyTry resources as a school psych. My background and specialty is the topic of resilience, and that's really at the core of what we're going to be talking about today. Is really trying to share and unlock a practical model of resilience. And so we're fortunate to have one of the best in Christian Moore, who's the founder of the WhyTry program, to give some of his insight on this model of resilience that we've been able to use and fine tune for 2 decades as an organization now, and been able to reach a lot of kids and a lot of adults in all 50 states, in Australia, the United Kingdom. It's been a really, really fun journey. So, Christian, without further ado, I'm going to throw it over to you and let you get into it, man.
All right, awesome, awesome. I'll tell you what, Jason, we do quite a few of these a year, and I'll tell you what, man, the people we have on this one are some amazing people. I recognize many names. There's even mentors of mine out there. Hello to everybody. Special shout out to Tim Nolan. But there's some incredible, incredible people, and I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us now for the next about 50 minutes. So we will promise not to waste your time here. Let me pull up this first slide here. Let me get that to pull up. There we go. Um, People always say to me, Christian, what's the number one thing a person has to have to be resilient? I always say to them, to be resilient, resilience is this ability to bounce back. You have to have something to bounce back from. So until suffering shows up, resilience does not show up. So the key ingredient to resilience is suffering. The very last speech I ever give, I'm going to say that, drop the mic, and it'll be a 2-second speech. But so me and Jason are going to walk you through a bunch of tools. It's going to be a lot of information really fast. But if you hang with us, I promise you, I'm going to let you all know we have some pretty cool surprises at the end. We got a couple freebies here at the end and some really cool things. Um, I grew up outside of Baltimore during the 70s and 80s, and that was a fun time to grow up in Baltimore. It was kind of a crazy situation at times. In the evenings, usually on a Friday night, we would cruise into Baltimore, and usually we got in trouble and doing different things. But both my parents had mental illness, so I was able to do that. And my parents really couldn't supervise me as a child growing up. I was a special education student. I have severe learning disabilities, really struggled with basic math and reading. I was illiterate when I was 17 years old. And when you have those struggles, you really don't think you're going to get out of your neighborhood. I was talking to my 18-year-old son the other day, and he was like, Dad, you had no hope for leaving your neighborhood? That is the funniest thing I've ever heard. And I said, Carson, none of my friends had cars. All your friends have cars. Y'all can jump in a car anytime you want, go anywhere, do whatever you want. And there was very few of us that had access to an automobile. And so I really didn't think I'd get very far from my neighborhood, let alone have the opportunity to go 7 million miles across the planet. I was talking to one of the VPs of Delta sitting on a flight not too long ago, and he told me I'm like in a 0.1 percentile. So I'm basically an astronaut on Earth being able to go that many miles. That made me chuckle a little bit. Let me pull up the next slide here. So that's my journey a little bit.
There we go.
There we go.
Low on the transition.
And yeah, I don't know why it's going. There we go. And I'm the author of the book, The Resilience Breakthrough. I saw in the chat, several of you said you read the book, so thank you for reading it. Let me go to the next one. By the way, we just sold over 150,000 copies now. The publisher told me is in print. But I wanted to know where resilience comes from internally. I did my graduate thesis looking at the impact that learning disabilities has on poverty and crime. I learned that over 70% of youth in our youth correction system have a learning difference. Now, there's many reasons why a child is locked up besides a learning disability, but 70% of the time, we know there's a learning disability. With the adult population, it's over 80%. 70% of people on TANF on public assistance have learning differences. So that's really what I focused on, but that got me interested in resilience, trying to really come up with a solution to that problem. And I came across this longitudinal study, the Quai longitudinal study there, that you have two kids that grew up in the same home, the same neighborhood, the same background. One child makes it out, the other child doesn't make it. I saw that in my own family. Some of my older siblings spent time being incarcerated. I was able to be a commencement speaker at John Hopkins, speak at a White House convening. What's the X factor? It's the debate between nature and nurture and all these things. We know it's both. It's a combination of both. But the key is the ability to see your problem as a resource. That was one of the X factors they found in that Quai longitudinal study, and that key is resilience. So for years, I verbally told my story, and one day, a friend of mine who's a therapist said to me, Hey, Christian, you tell your trauma over and over again. Why don't you put that in a video? And by the way, in this video, my blood sugar is 730. Like 2 days after this video was made, I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. I've been off of insulin now for over 2.5 years, so I'm doing much, much better. But keep in mind, I'm on a little bit of a sugar high, over 700 in this video. So that always makes me crack up when I watch this video. But I made the comeback. I'm resilient. I'm resilient. Here's the video.
I grew up in between Baltimore and DC in a family of 12 kids, 5 brothers, 6 sisters. Both my parents had some mental health challenges. My mom had social phobia, generalized anxiety disorder, had a fear of leaving the house. You have to leave the house to go get food. So there wasn't a lot of food to eat sometimes in my house growing up.
Don't tell anyone, but my dad was one of the highest level code breakers at the National Security Agency. You could give my dad any mathematical problem and he could instantly rattle it off the top of his head. My dad was autistic. He was a genius, but he had very little common sense or social skills. If you've ever seen that movie, A Beautiful Mind, you've met my dad.
So having 2 parents with some mental health challenges put me in a situation where I ended up being a street kid. I could hang out till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning on a school night, had very few rules, very few boundaries. One night, I was out late at night and a car pulls up and I hear a voice. And the voice I hear is the voice of a woman who I endearingly call Mama Jackson. It was one of my best friend's moms who sees me out there, late at night.
Christian had so many obstacles that was going on in his home.
She knows what I'm out there doing, and she says, look, don't you ever set foot on our property. I'm gonna call the school tomorrow. I'm gonna make sure you're not in any of Sean's classes. I remember thinking to myself, dang, I know I'm bad, but I'm not that bad. I can never go to school with him ever again.
When you see a child that's hungry, there's no happiness there. You're thinking about what other kids have that they don't have, okay? But when you see a child that's hungry and you give that child some food, you see that child's disposition change.
Going to school was very difficult for me. As a child, I was diagnosed with ADHD, conduct disorder, and severe learning disabilities. When I was sitting in a classroom, oftentimes, I was embarrassed. When I got called out loud, I would act up and get in trouble instead of embarrassing myself because I didn't know how to read or didn't know how to do basic math. So, for me, it was like going to the doctor's office every day, going to school. I had a hard time telling time. When I was even 17 years old, I couldn't tell time on a hand clock. To me, 4:45 equals 25 minutes to 5, but they tell me a quarter's 15. But how could a quarter not equal 25?
When we concentrate on that more to make sure that a child's needs are provided for, then that child will thrive. I know that I'm loved, and I know that this person is going to feed me to make sure I have what I need.
Mama Jackson took over.
One of his teachers in high school said to him that he would never go to college. Christian went to college.
Growing up in between DC and Baltimore, I saw many social problems in my community, in my neighborhood. I saw poverty, I saw hopelessness at times. I even saw some violence. But I remember walking to school one morning and literally seeing one of my best friends evicted from his house. His furniture was all throughout his front yard. I could see the heartbreak in his eyes, his parents' eyes. And I knew in that moment, I wanted to be a social worker. And I knew I could not become a social worker unless I went to college. But I was told college was probably not going to be an option for me with a 6th grade math level, a 7th grade reading and writing level. Statistically, I had a better chance of playing the NBA and becoming LeBron James.
His experience was at the other side of the track. Life was different. Life was unique. And the kids like that, they have to survive.
I struggled getting through college math. College math is a requirement to make it through school. I remember that feeling in my stomach when I knew I couldn't graduate.
They're not going to let me graduate because I can't do math. I can't count money, I can't numbers, I get confused and all of these things. He was like a bobcat in a cage.
So I came up with something called the No F game plan. And this was a strategy that I used to make it through school with my learning differences.
he made himself big. He made himself known to others. I'm here. Hey, I may not have what you have, but I have a street smart.
I would go to every class. I would sit on the front row. I would do all the homework assignments. And I would do enough extra credit to get a D minus. I would shoot for A's, but I learned in college you get just as much credit with a D minus.
And his paper is not polished. Other students get an A. Christian gets B, sometimes a C.
Jason, what's
But
wrong with this?
he has ideas. He has a substance. And the WhyTry program that he ran with and helped incredible number of students and the teachers and administrators came out of a classwork.
He created an environment to teach teachers how to really deal with students that may have significant functional limitations.
I persevered. Luckily, I knew what resilience was. I knew how to take my academic challenges and use them as a reason to knock down barriers, to focus on what was right with me, not what was wrong with me.
The vision of WhyTry, and I think this thing is called the roller coaster ride. And I'm so glad that when he fell off of that roller coaster, that he got back on.
Dr. Virgil Wood, civil rights icon and close friend to Dr. Martin Luther King, learned about WhyTry's impact and decided to honor Mama Jackson with the National Rosa Parks Save the Children Award. Mama Jackson gave me a safe and loving environment so I could thrive. She didn't get rid of my problems at home, at school, in my neighborhood. She showed me how to use those problems as a fuel source to put one foot in front of another and create a productive outcome with the opposition. Despite my many challenges, I was able to get a master's degree with a 6th grade math level and a 7th grade reading and writing level and become a licensed clinical social worker. As a school social worker, I quickly noticed it was very difficult to engage students like myself, especially students coming to school with no paper, no pencil, no notebook, totally disengaged from the academic process. I noticed doing verbal cognitive intervention didn't reach many of these students. One day my colleague pointed out to me that most of the students I'm working with are visual learners, not auditory learners. So I thought to myself, wait a minute, I'm an artist. Why would I not take everything and make it visual for the student? Most of these kids are visual learners. So I decided to take evidence-based mental health practice and deliver it in visual metaphors. And I noticed once I did it in a visual metaphor, the student locked in on the visual picture. It kept them engaged. They were far more interested in what I was doing. I knew I had the student in that moment. Using visual metaphors to teach things like your decisions have consequences, how to tear off your labels, how to understand your emotions and the emotions of others. And what was really exciting to me is sometimes 2 or 3 weeks later, they could remember the details of what we did a few weeks before in counseling. And that's when I knew we had that engagement. Then we decided to reinforce the picture with music and physical activities to increase that engagement even more. We took brief solution-focused therapy, reality therapy, strength-based counseling, and combined it into a learning method that any educator or counselor could use to reach students, especially students that are having a hard time answering the question, why try?
All right. As you can see, I was extremely blessed, lucky, hit the lottery 100 times over having Mama Jackson show up into my life. This guy right here, Dr. Mike Seipel, he's out of Cornell University, and him believing in me and getting behind me was huge. you know, he wanted to know, Christian, how did you make it through school with your background, with your learning disabilities? And that kind of became the start of WhyTry. And then I realized, again, a lot of these students, I could verbally talk to them, but a lot of times they weren't retaining it, they weren't motivated. But when I created that visual picture, that changed everything here. When I started just drawing everything in counseling, if I hit that next slide, that you can see kind of this next picture. I just started drawing. The first picture I started drawing was just a roller coaster that showed the ups and downs of life. Hey, Jason, why don't you break down the reality ride a little bit here for them and go from there?
Yeah, happy to do it. So at the core of the WhyTry approach, essentially we've broken resilience down into 10 skills of resilience. And we use this in all different areas. We use this in gen ed settings, special ed settings, specialty groups, intervention groups. I know we've got quite a few people on here today that are involved with juvenile justice in some capacity. So dealing with students that have typically been told that they have to participate in some type of program as a response to a history of challenges or problems that they've been involved in. And so we've broken resilience down into 10 specific skills of resilience. And then we teach each skill using visual metaphors, an interactive approach, using a lot of activities. I know we actually have some people on here that have been using WhyTry for a while as well. I'll tease just a little bit for those that are currently using it. We just completed like a week and a half ago a series of self-guided student worksheets that involve these visual metaphors as well. I'll mention those again towards the end, but we have this great kind of suite of material. And so at the core of these are visual metaphors that become kind of an inviting space for a student or an adult or client to see their life within the image. And so in this case, we have the reality ride, and the key skill of resilience here that we're teaching is improved decision making, recognizing that our decisions have consequences. And so you have two tracks here that go in very different directions. One track is called the easy fast track. It's the track that seems more exciting, more exhilarating, more fun in life. If you look at that, that's the one that has the big hill at the beginning. And that hill is usually the exciting point that kind of attracts people to get on that easy fast track. But if you follow that track, you'll see that there's a crash, and that's where the reality hits. The reality is decisions have consequences, and that thing that I may pursue right now, you know, whether it's skipping class, skipping homework, or something more with more extreme consequences like doing drugs or getting involved in criminal activity or something, there is eventually a consequence after that excitement wears off. And the consequence comes in the form of a crash and a loop that kind of spits us out and starts us back over, and we're no closer towards our goals in life, and rarely do we make progress. We have this other track that we can take. It's called the harder but worth it track. And that track still has ups and downs and challenges, but when we stay on it, as you can see, you start to get closer to your goal. And at the end of that track, the track splits, and it represents holding on to options and opportunity. And the harder but worth it track almost always leads to more options down the road, and the easy fast track almost always limits our options. So what we would do is we would take something like this, and we would take a very interactive conversational approach where we ask open-ended questions to invite a student to engage with the picture, or a group. We do this in one-on-one settings, small group settings, classroom-wide settings. And then as we engage with students and make it interactive with video and activities, they begin to experience these concepts, these big picture skills of resilience concepts at a different level, and hopefully start to see how that applies and impacts their life. And so we have a series about 40 of these, including our elementary banded images. And it becomes a really fun way to teach the skills of resilience and really take a skills-based approach. So whether you're in a corrections type settings where you're responding after an event has happened, or if you're in a setting where you're really trying to initiate early intervention and preventative approaches, that skills-based approach to resilience becomes really, really effective. So we've got a few more. Christian, I don't know if you want to talk on any of these.
Yeah, let me talk about this one a little bit here. Tearing off labels. I grew up with a lot of these labels right here: failure, druggie, learning disabled, dumb, lazy, rebellious, troublemaker. I had to get those labels off. One thing we'll do with this one, we'll have the students circle any of these labels they have, and then sometimes I'll even tease them a little bit and say, hey, I got to label you too. But my job is to help you tear off any label that I put on you. And then we take the piece of paper, we'll turn it over, I'll draw the outline of a can, I'll fill up the can with the strengths, what I like about myself, what do others like about me, and just really focusing on what's right with them. And you can see every question that the teacher or the counselor asks the students written there for them. But we have a physical activity with that one. We'll literally cut the bottom of the can off, fill the inside the can with Starburst, crazy glue the lid back on the bottom of the can, put a blank label on the can. Then we'll have the students put their strengths on one side, their negative labels, rip off their negative labels. We hand them a can opener. They open up the can, and then on the inside of the can is the Starburst. And we'll say, look, the Starburst represent the real you. So they physically experience something, they visually see it, and they hear it in music. Hey, Jason, you want to take the next one?
Yeah, happy to do it. So
Yeah,
I
okay.
mentioned we have these 10 units. Each one coincides with a specific skill of resilience. So for example, tearing off labels coincides with the skill of resilience of positive self-image. Resilient individuals typically have a positive sense of self. And sometimes that requires proactively tearing off negative labels that they may not even realize they have attached to them, and then trying to help every student recognize the goodness that we see in them and try to project that, show that to the world. So in conjunction with the visual metaphors, we have a collection of activities, stories, video clips, art activities, etc. That tearing off labels learning unit, that's another one of my favorites. I echo everything Christian said. I've had some really, really like emotionally touching experiences delivering that to students, where when they start to feel empowered to tear off some of their negative labels, it's a really transformative and emotional experience in many cases, when they start to recognize the goodness within them and recognize that they don't have to be defined by these negative labels, which just kind of erode and destroy a person's hope. Here's the kind of the master list of skills of resilience that we try to teach using these visual metaphors. And by the way, whether you've used WhyTry or not, if this is your first exposure to it, I'm going to offer up at the end, we've put together a really nice, very simple list of I can be resilient statements that are useful. They align with our 10 skills of resilience, and they're really useful in any setting. I'm going to put up at the end my email address, and I'm happy to share that with anybody. But here's the kind of the master list of skills of resilience that we want to be able to teach. And this is a great blueprint in any setting. For those that are in juvenile justice settings, this is a really nice blueprint of skills to teach from both a preventative and corrective standpoint. So we have improved decision making. Resilient individuals are typically able to recognize the difference in decisions and make good decisions, recognizing decisions have consequences. Positive self-image that we've talked about. Emotional regulation is a huge one. What do I do when I become angry, frustrated, anxious, nervous, sad, etc.? How do I react when that emotion becomes elevated inside of me? Having a resilient mindset, can I change how I view my challenges in life so that I don't see challenges as an impossible obstacle, but something that I can navigate through? That's a huge one, kind of like ground zero for resilience, because we know so many of our students, they bring baggage into our office that already exists, and we can't take certain things away, things that are part of their history, their experience, etc., their home life. We may not be able to change that or take that away. So can we help a person change how they view their challenges as a key piece to the resilience puzzle? Peer influence in relationships. How do I connect to positive systems of support? problem solving. Resilient individuals are typically good problem solvers. Hard work and determination. Can I learn the value of putting sustained effort into something and seeing things through to completion rather than quitting or giving up when things become difficult or frustrating? Responsibility and expectations. Can I see the value of following the rules, laws, guidelines, etc., that exist around me? Relationship building. Can I seek out continually positive systems of support? And then last but not least, self-efficacy, which is one of the fundamental ingredients of resilience by most researchers' standards. Self-efficacy is kind of this clinical term for confidence that you can influence your outcomes. Do I believe that if I put effort into something, I can influence my outcome? And it allows me to take a more proactive approach to life rather than just be strictly reactionary. It has a really nice connection, self-efficacy does, to hope. Hope is a really key ingredient to resilience as well. So this is kind of the blueprint towards teaching and improving resilience in the individuals' lives that we're working with. So for example, emotional regulation would use this visual metaphor as kind of the blueprint to dig into it. We talk about how a knight's armor defends itself and how we're all kind of protecting our feelings inside of us. And emotional regulation becomes this game plan to prepare for what I can do if I become, can I recognize when my emotion starts to elevate, and then can I react appropriately so that I'm not doing something that hurts myself or hurts others? Really, really key piece. Christian, you want to talk about the motivation formula?
Yeah, I look at life's problems being like water. You got to drink enough water or Coke Zero and to stay alive, but too much water, and hey, I almost died of diabetes, and too much real Coke will kill you. But it's that fine line. But again, the storms of life are going to show up, and you definitely want to have people in your life that know your strengths and they know your weaknesses, but they treat you the same. That first dam there that I put the challenge through is the choice to use positive self-talk. We want them to focus their self-talk on what they have control over. They got to tap into character and heart. You got to get the heck out of your brain. My brain tells me I'm short, fat, goofy, and I talk too much, right? But I got to get the heck out of here and believe in here, that heart out, to tap into all those skills, that blueprint that Jason was talking about. Jason, I really believe that blueprint, the motivation to apply and to get those skills takes place here. And you got to tap into a passion, purpose, or interest. And then you got to get plugged into a support system. Me and Jason have a similar passion, purpose, or interest is to reach these kids, and we've been a support system to each other. And that gives us, helps us answer that question, why try? You'll have more opportunity, freedom, self-respect. So again, I don't look at life's pain. I don't look at sadness, hurt, trauma while you're going through it, of course, it's always negative, but as you take it and you channel it through these 4 dams, I see amazing things. Some of the greatest examples of the human condition, what makes humans so powerful is our ability to change, to adapt, to use pain in productive ways. This next one's a tribute to my home state of Maryland. You put a bunch of live crabs in a pot. If you don't put a lid on the pot, why can't the crabs get out of the pot? The other crabs are reaching up and pulling them down. So I'll say, hey, your friends you're skipping school with, you're doing drugs with, fighting with, all they're doing is they're pulling you down. They're keeping you in that pot. I do a little magic trick with this one. I'll tell the kids, blink twice. If you blink twice, instead of the crabs pushing each other into the pot, they're pushing each other out of the pot. We know positive peer support. I mean, when my children have positive friends, man, my life as a parent is 100 times easier. When my kids are kicking it with kids that are wanting to do some crazy stuff, my job as a parent is 10 times harder. You want to add anything else to the grab pot there, Jason?
No, well, maybe, I guess just a little. This is
Tied
teaching
into the blueprint. What would you say on the blueprint?
Yeah, so I was going to say this connects to the skill of resilience of peer influence. This is a great place to explore the impact of negative peer pressure, which we know has such a massive influence. For those that are living in the world of corrections or juvenile justice, or if you're on the school side and you intersect with that world at all, this is a huge one. for trying to support students that are being impacted by that, because there's such a constant challenge of, there's really two things happening here connected to that skill of resilience. One, you have the negative peer influence of people trying to pull us down, and we all see that. We work with a student in our office or in our school, we make progress, then they go home and or go back to their community or back to their friend group, and they get pulled back into previous habits. So that's one thing we're trying to confront here. The other thing is the natural limitations of that pot. That pot represents different experiences we live in, sometimes voluntarily, sometimes not so much, that put limitations on us as well. Like the crabs that are inside the pot are limited in their progress to the literal walls of that pot. And so we're trying to help students see beyond that as well. A lot of resilience comes down to changing and shifting perspectives and paradigms. And so we have so many students stuck in pots. The pot may be negative self-image, or the pot may be a friend group that continually encourages or limits how they view themselves. And so being able to see beyond and get out of certain pots, sometimes the pots are just habits, bad habits that we've developed, becomes a critical piece as well. And so this is a really fun one to explore that. And the visual is really striking on this. This one, I've had this personal experience with students where I've put this image up in front of a student that was struggling, and literally before I even began to tell them what the concept was, they looked at it. I vividly remember I had a teenager, 15-year-old teenager, that looked at the image and then looked at me, and he said, "That's me and my friends, isn't it?" And he proceeded to tell me, and that's part of the power of using a visual approach to help teach these skills of resilience and follow this blueprint, is it really connects with them. I love it.
Yeah, let's highlight these other ones real quick, and then I'll have you do over the wall real fast. This one, they just it's a simple problem solving model. They write in whatever their problem is, and we just walk them through these 6 steps: identify the problem, create options, get help, take action. My favorite is believe in change. 1, I can't change. 10, I know I have the strength. If they say anything below a 5, I'll spend the next little while helping them believe that change is possible. Because if you don't believe change is going to happen, you're not going to put a lot of effort in. The next one, now remember, we could spend an hour on each one of these pictures. This is a maze. It takes them 20 minutes to get through this maze. They have to have the desire to do it. They have to put the time in. They have to put the effort in. It's hard work. Often when I speak to students, I'll say, what will take you further in life? Hard work or being smart? And they'll say, being smart. And I'll say, hey, you guys are lucky. You're smart and you're hardworking. I wasn't the sharpest cookie in the drawer. Yeah, that's my built-in joke. But I worked really hard. For 7 years, I traveled over 200 days a year for 7 years. And so that's what I had to do to reach a little bit of the American dream. The next picture here, they got to live society's laws and rules. You can see he's buff on one side. He's kind of weak on the other side. If you lift a balloon all day long, you're not going to get stronger. I've spent my whole life, lifting that balloon. So that's why I'm in top physical condition. Just kidding. But you have to lift that weight. That weight represents laws and rules. It could be, different rules at home, at society, in school. You have to lift that resistance to become stronger. And then the next picture is they've got to get plugged into a support system. When I first work with students, they usually have 1 or less of these. My goal is they get plugged into 3 of these. One great thing that came from COVID is that debate is over. We did a worldwide study, what happens when humans go into isolation, and it is not good. And so we saw all the mental health issues across this world after that. And so that debate is over. And then the last one, I'm gonna turn it back over to Jason here, and maybe Jason, you wrap it up. I'll share one other thing, and Jason, but you give them the big picture on seeing over the wall, because this is so key, especially to that blueprint. I mean, this is literally that blueprint Jason shared in one picture.
Yeah, so this is kind of the journey we're trying to take our students on. And this is usually one of the latter lessons or discussions we would take our students through. This within that blueprint model, this connects to the skill of resilience of self-efficacy. And so you see that student on the ground level, he's got a very limited wall because a wall is, or very limited vision because a wall is blocking his view. And that wall represents challenges that may be inherent in that student's life. And so our goal is to try to help students step away from that wall and then provide a framework of skills, specifically skills of resilience, the blueprint, right? To help them move to the top of that wall. And the student on top of that wall still has challenges in his life, relatively speaking, but you can see he has a much different field of vision. He can see opportunity, freedom, and self-respect. And so the goal here is really, when we're talking about like the goal with resilience, in my opinion, the goal of resilience is to help a person maintain their ability to thrive. And oftentimes the difference between being able to thrive and not being able to thrive comes down to how we're viewing our challenges, because the challenges may be there, but that student on top of the wall, when we start to see and recognize opportunity and freedom in our life, that is the kind of the platform to begin to thrive a little bit, even despite challenges that may be present. So within this learning unit, we're trying to help shift perspective so that we're seeing our challenges differently. And then we're also trying to help underscore that idea of self-efficacy. Not only can we see opportunity, but we want students to have the belief and the hope that if they remain consistent and sustain effort and good decision-making and positive self-image in their life, that they will be able to begin to influence their outcomes. And things may not always go their way and they may have setbacks. We all do, but the ability to thrive within the framework of resilience is what keeps us going, what keeps us putting one foot in front of the other and really trying to pursue whatever goals we may have in life. And so this is a really fun kind of bookend to the discussions we've been having up to that point to really represent the shift that we're trying to help influence within the lives of these kiddos. You want me to keep going on this part, Christian?
Yeah. Just highlight these.
So just real quickly, for those that are familiar with us, you know, we work in pre-K and elementary settings. We work in middle school settings, high school settings. We actually work in post-secondary settings, correction settings, after school, etc. And we have a really nice flexibility to our approach. We started things off at the very beginning as a toolkit for counselors, where we were mostly being used in one-on-one settings. Pretty quickly, we expanded out into something that was used in small group settings, and then it expanded out into something that is used in classroom and class and school-wide settings, where we have something that resembles a more traditional classroom curriculum. We're still used in all of those settings. We're still used in one-on-one, small group, and large group settings. Somebody asked yesterday the ideal setting. We've built in flexibility to work anywhere. My favorite place, if you have the luxury of it, is small groups. I think small groups are ideal. They're the easiest to try to maintain some semblance of control within the group, but a group is a really useful laboratory to practice these skills of resilience. In many cases, resilience involves how we interact with other humans, and so a small group is a great place to practice that. As we mentioned, we've got our toolkit, our materials. There is an approach behind all this, and I've tried to illustrate that for you a little bit. But in addition to that blueprint of the skills of resilience, we also have a collection of delivery strategies. We call those competencies. So from a fidelity standpoint, the WhyTry approach is the combination of content that you deliver and then specific delivery strategies that you follow. We've talked a little bit about it. I'll go very quickly over this. The backbone of this whole blueprint is a basic understanding of resilience. And for many of you, especially if you've been doing this for a while, the root question, and this is the same question that most researchers start with, is why will two people respond so differently to challenges in their life. And we see this with students. A lot of times, if you've worked long enough to work with siblings, you see this. I see this with my own children. Why will one, in the face of a certain challenge, give up, resort to destructive behavior, maybe wanting to hurt others or hurt themselves, and another person in that same setting will double down their efforts to try to work harder and continue to do better each day? And the answer is, the difference in that moment is one is demonstrating resilience and the other one isn't. So the big question is, where does resilience come from? And is it something that you can teach? And the good news is that resilience really can be taught. The godmother of resilience research is a woman named Ann Maston out of the University of Minnesota. She's been able to show through her research that all humans have the capacity for resilience and that it can be taught. Some do come into this world with a greater predisposition towards resilience, but the research overwhelmingly shows that all humans can improve their resilience. That message is really important for all of us as adult facilitators, because it means that every student you work with, even if you're in a very severe or challenging like corrections or juvenile justice setting, each of those students you work with does have within them the seeds of resilience. Then the question becomes, how do we tap into that and begin to elevate that? And at the core of that is this blueprint that we've established. The other half of that is really how we connect and our connection process and the relationships we build along the way. Fundamental definition, ability to bounce back when you have every reason to shut down, but you fight on. And then we expanded this out in the book Christian wrote called The Resilience Breakthrough, where we actually identified 4 sources of resilience, a really useful model. So we've been talking skills up to this point, but one of the things that's really important in that blueprint for resilience is to also understand sources of resilience. So we've identified 4 sources of resilience that we highlight in Christian's book. Relational resilience is the recognition that human connection is the backbone of resilience, how we connect to other humans. Street resilience is the act of learning how to channel negative emotions towards a productive outcome. If I get angry or if something bad happens to me and I become frustrated, can I channel that experience towards a productive outcome rather than resorting to behavior that may be destructive? Resource resilience is becoming a good problem solver by being resourceful, recognizing and using internal and external resources. And then rock bottom resilience is the application of that self-efficacy piece. How do I apply that, not just in a rock bottom moment, but also in everyday life when I'm faced with smaller or simpler challenges? I want to give Christian the opportunity to talk a little bit about these because he has some really useful insight. I'm wondering, Christian, maybe do you want to talk a little bit about these? Maybe talk about channeling emotions with the battery, and then if we have time, throw it back to me, and I'll talk a little bit about flipping the switch.
Yeah, perfect. Let's do that. Let's do that. That's perfect. Yeah, skip that. And then, but real quick, I just want to walk you through a simple model here. The first thing you have to be resilient is you have to have suffering. The second thing you have to do is ask yourself how to use that suffering as your best friend. That's what Jason just alluded to, flipping the switch. And then I wanted to figure out, it's interesting. I was very blessed to be able to travel all these miles. And the first couple of years I was a social worker, I worked with children and families that had high trauma and they were hurting themselves and others. That's usually why, I would work with them in therapy, right? And then in my travels, I kept coming across kids from Detroit to Los Angeles to Baltimore. And these are kids who had extremely high trauma, but they were actually using that trauma in productive ways. I was like, wow, all right, this is a really interesting thing. And 90% of these kids they're not going to work with a social worker. These are kids with high trauma that are thriving. And we kept seeing those 4 sources. That's where that came from. But I also started noticing they had the ability to maximize both positive and negative emotions. So let me show you how I introduce this to all kids. I use a metaphor here of the battery, and I'll say, look, can you charge the battery with a positive connection? They'll say no. Can you charge a battery with a negative connection? They'll say no. So we all know it's the positive and the negative coming together. Well, if you think about it, you have twice the fuel source to bounce back if you can maximize both positive and negative emotions. I'm really serious when I say this. This is probably one of the most powerful things I've ever learned in life. I'm 55 years old. Man, I wish I would have understood this at 30. And it's a rush teaching this to kids, as young as, third grade, helping them understand that the minute they feel angry, fear, anxiety, sorrow, disappointment, nothing's wrong with them. That's literally the human condition. Every human being experiences negative emotions. For example, all of us today are going to experience anywhere between 40 to 70,000 different emotions today. And some of those emotions are going to be positive, some of those emotions are going to be negative. And the ability to maximize your emotions, whether they're positive or negative, again, gives you twice the fuel source to bounce back. Now, don't hear me wrong. If you're feeling self-respect, love, happiness, feeling hopeful, calm, maximize those emotions. Those are positive emotions are the greatest thing in the world. It's just that I spent 8 years in college, $65,000. They never mentioned to me how to create a productive outcome with negative emotions. It was all about extinguishing those emotions. But again, when I saw families thriving, all of them were maximizing both their positive and negative emotions. Um, and by the way, if you feel sad, hurt, or angry, that's the human condition. That's what makes you human. If you never felt negative emotions, you may as well be a robot. You may as well be a machine. Can we use our negative emotions to create productive outcomes? And how those four sources of resilience are where the inner motivation comes from to apply this. All right, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Jason, and we'll wind this up.
Yeah, let me give just a nice companion tool with this. And by the way, I agree. When Christian presented this model of emotional fuel, it was a real aha moment for me as well. This is one of my favorites to teach students. It's really empowering to help them recognize, like, we don't have to say you shouldn't be angry, or you're wrong to be angry. Like, we can normalize all the emotions our bodies are designed to feel, and then provide a model for helping students to recognize how to leverage those. One really nice companion piece with this idea of emotional fuel is this strategy we teach called flipping the switch. Flipping the switch in its simplest form is this strategy with a really nice verbal cue of recognizing that we can, in the moment, shift our perspective towards our challenges. So if you think about like a room where the lights are off, if you flip the light switch on, the lights come on and you immediately see things differently in the room. Well, in a stressful situation, we can apply the same thing. And it's got a great verbal cue that can kind of pause us and catch our attention. Can I flip the switch right now? Hey, buddy, I need you to flip the switch. And in that moment, we can ask ourselves how we can view things differently, or how we might respond differently. I use this professionally all the time. As adult professionals, we end up in stressful situations that it would be very easily to react negatively in. If you've ever had a student do something very disrespectful to you, spit at you, try to take a swing at you, you scream the F word in your face, those things that have happened to many of us. But the flip side is, if we ever have a disagreement with a colleague and coworker, or don't see eye to eye with a boss, or if we've ever had a parent suggest that we don't know what we're doing, those are moments where professionally, as the grown-ups, our emotion may become elevated. We have to flip the switch. Well, we can teach this to children, to students, all the way down into first graders. I've seen first graders learn this and say to me, I just got to flip the switch right now. And it becomes a great verbal cue. It's got a nice visual that attaches to it. And when you combine this with emotional fuel that Christian mentioned, this is a really useful foundational approach to beginning to exercise resilience. Can I shift my perspective in the moment? And can I recognize that I can channel all my emotion towards trying to create a productive outcome? That becomes ground zero towards then applying that blueprint of the skills of resilience that I mentioned. Really fun, really exciting. And this, again, is such a game changer. I've had students come back and give feedback of how they flip the switch. I always give the homework assignment. Find an opportunity this week to where you can flip the switch in a frustrating moment, and it becomes really powerful. Again, all of these are straight from our toolkit. I mentioned a couple things I want to address. Before I do that, Christian, do you have anything you want to add on the model or the approach or anything that we've discussed?
Yeah, just want to emphasize in the book, The Resilience Breakthrough, we have 27 tools on how to apply everything we're talking about, because we're giving you so much information so fast. So we really appreciate everybody. We all know communication's two ways, and I really appreciate, I know we're dumping so much information. And no, that's it, Jason. Just that. I want to thank everybody, and we'll stay on for a few minutes if anybody has questions. And Jason's going to put up a QR code with some great resources. Go ahead, Jason. Share what you're going to do.
I love it. And I saw a couple people in the comments saying this would help so much at home with my own kiddos. Yes, please do. I do this all the time, and it's a great test. It's really hard being an educator and a parent like you. I run into this where I'm like, I feel like I have respect in my school. People respect me as a professional, and then I go home in my own home and I'm like, I don't think my kids got the memo that I'm a good school psychologist. Why aren't they listening to me? And so we have to constantly try to apply this as well. And our homes are great workshops for that. So a couple things. First of all, we have a resilience bundle, including a parent resource that we want to share with you. Hit this QR code and we will get you the parent resource as well as our resilience bundle. There's some really great resources in there. Whether even if your school doesn't have WhyTry, if you're not on a spot, Natasha, where you can hit the QR code, shoot me an email, jason@whytry.org, and I'll make sure you get it. We have a great program. A great program director named Mike Yantis. I'll probably get in contact with a few of you as well. But if you want this resilience bundle, reach out. For those that are currently using WhyTry, if you're interested in our student worksheets, shoot me an email as well. I would love to have you trying them. We literally just released them like a week and a half ago. Really excited about what they'll do. They're going to help you maximize time, and they're going to help you give some really nice self-guided opportunity for your students, and they've got great facilitator overviews. Next thing, I have developed this I Can Be Resilient statement document that I want to share with you. It's really handy, and I've found it to be a really nice, simple approach of just nice reinforcing statements that coincide with that blueprint of resilience. I am happy to share this with you. So this is the document. You can see with each skill of resilience, so improved decision making, here's our 3 I Can Be Resilient statements. If we can help every student apply those and recognize the value of those in their life, this is a great beginning point to begin the process of teaching that skill of resilience. But this is also a great simple assessment to be able to verify, are you actually applying the things that we're practicing, the things that we're learning? I am happy to share this with any of you that want it or feel like it would be useful. Just shoot me an email and I will be happy to get that to you. You can email me, jason@whytry.org.
The other thing is, Jason, I'm seeing several people in the chat window have said, they wish they could share this with other people and stuff. I know this was a little bit rushed. What I'm doing right now is I'm doing some workshops. If they're online, I'm doing some workshops on resilience. It's just basically my resilience keynote. And, people sometimes pay thousands of dollars for that. I'm going to literally give it away free here for a couple of weeks. If you want me to do that, go to jason@whytry.org and request a free, lesson there on resilience. And again, I'll do it online, and we'll do it in Zoom.
I love it.
As many people as you want to come. You can invite 100 people to come. It could be 10 people to 100 people, and I will do it for free. and try not to tell too many other people about it without getting myself in trouble. But anyways, I like to offer that. There's amazing people on here, and let's just get it where the rubber hits the road, man. Let's get these tools, and I promise we get a high acceptance rate. If you can get some of the key people in the room when I do that resilient demo, I think we can get a really good response, and you don't have to go back and really try to sell it to your bosses and supervisors. We can help you do that just by doing a presentation and showing them what we have. So again, just go to jason@whytry.org and we'll make that happen.
Yeah,
And
very generous of you, Christian. A person with limited time, very generous. So just to reiterate, if you want the bundle, hit this QR code. We would love to get these to you, these resources. If you want that list of I can be resilient statements, send me an email direct. This one is not included in the resilience bundle, but if this is useful to you, I'd love to get it to you. Jason@whytry.org, or if you want to take Christian up on trying to organize a local Zoom event and have him speak to your faculty or staff, hit me up on that as well. I'll coordinate. Link you up with my friend Mike, who will help coordinate those. And then if any of you are having issues with the QR code, just shoot me an email. But this has been awesome. I just want to thank everybody for showing up. Christian, thank you for sharing your story. I know it's not easy to kind of always relive that and continue to share it. And you've always been so generous to let other people learn from your lived experience and really seamlessly blend that into the model that we're presenting. And huge thank you to all of our friends that showed up for this workshop today. You're doing the real heavy lifting and the real work out there, and we really tip our hats to you. We know that it's probably more difficult now. I've been training educators for a decade, and I think this is the most challenging I've ever seen it for educators. And you all give me so much hope. You're fighting the good fight, and you're so committed to trying to help students and young people in your area, and you're braving all the challenges and complexities of education right now. You do it with grace, you do it with bravery, you do it with a fierceness that makes me proud to be an educator with you. So thank you all. Christian, any closing thoughts before we wrap things up? We're going to stick around, by the way, if any of you have questions.
we can stick around for 5 to 10 minutes and answer questions. And Jason is an expert, so jump on there if you have any questions. Jason knows WhyTry, our curriculum. He designed a lot of our curriculum, so he knows this by back of his hand. So take advantage of Jason here for a few minutes. And then, yeah, and I know Jason, several people have asked, can they get a copy of this? You'll be sending out a link to everybody where they can get access to this video?
In theory, yes. I don't know exactly how it will happen because I'm not like a full technology expert, but for those that want to share it, we did record it, and so we will try to get it in a shareable format for you if you want to share that with others. So we should be able to we'll see, it'll either be a Zoom share link or we'll figure something out. But yeah, otherwise, thank you so much. Appreciate your time.